Well, this week I posted an article called Ghetto, Politics, and Economics. And I did it based on my life and was pleased that some of the old guys, the old warriors from the 60s and 70s verified my posts. One of the things I talked about was during the 60s and 70s, they gave me everything I wanted. I ran a small college, and I'm 27 years old. Ran a small college. I had karate programs, football, basketball. I had all the things that I wanted to do. I took kids on field trips as far away as SeaWorld in San Diego, to Los Angeles, to the Egyptian Museum in San Jose. Basically, I got it all. Then one day, I found that there was a security project for the Hunters Point Housing Authority run by a police officer and an old pimp. Now, the problem was the employees were burglarizing the housing projects. So someone whom I happened to know offered me a contract. As a consultant, they were going to pay me, and because my parents taught me well, I decided I could do that for free. I had a good salary. From that point on, the big guns never talked to me again. In fact, a few weeks later, I noticed in the newspaper, in a local newspaper, that I was being charged for stealing $189 in airline tickets. Now, I don't know where that came from, and I didn't hear about it again until 1982 when I was running for sheriff in Adams County, Colorado. And the police department, I guess saving their guts from a lawsuit, said, well, you know, back in 1967, 68, we could have charged him with just having a uniform button missing from his uniform. Now, during the same time, they had offered me $35,000. Of course, making $9,600 as a police officer, I felt, okay, I was making a good salary, so I decided I only wanted $15,000, and with the other $20,000, I would hire 4 part-timers. Most of the executives were making around $35,000 at that time. In fact, one of them who became a very good friend, because when I needed programs, I used to bring the Black Panther Party into the community. I worked with the Big Five, who were powerful. We had programs where we had lots of community meetings. I met Stokely Carmichael actually at that meeting. But I kept telling him, they're giving you good money, but when white men come bearing gifts, there's something on the tail end that you have to recognize. Well, later, they pulled a government sting and he went to jail. Some of the other guys that I tried to explain that to, Adam Rogers, for example, one of the toughest guys I ever knew, was the first murder in 1976. Rumor was that they shot battery acid in his arm, they poured Clorox down his throat. Then, of course, Jerry Collins, a bunch of the other guys came up missing. My history began when a guy named Frog was shot in a liquor store on 3rd and Oakdale. Followed that, we had the 1966 riots. I was on the corner, the only black on the corner for hours. When I posted this, I talked to one of my old buddies, Norman Brown, and Norman said, you know, I was in that building. I was hiding behind an old file cabinet when the police and the highway patrol shot that building up. Now, many times I've seen that report in local media, and they tried to say the guy who was involved, nickname was Peanut. His name was Frog. I was there. I experienced it. As I went on through life, I began to notice what became in the 70s gatekeepers. The black folks who did what white folks wanted them to do, held back all the blacks who had skills and got paid. Now, fortunately, being from a family that I was taught, I hate a liar and a thief, and if you'll lie, you'll steal, I didn't go that route. In fact, back about 71, I was in a meeting with Wesley Johnson Jr. From a proud pharmacy family in San Francisco, and Norman Jackson, who ran the largest black security guard program in California, Cal State Patrol Service, and they said, you know what, people don't trust you. They say you're too honest. It was in the 90s before I began to realize what they were talking about. It was in the 90s that I began to understand what I had done, why I was in the predicament I was. It was in the 90s that I began to understand ghetto economics and politics.